If you're a property investor and you're looking to take your portfolio to the next level, you can download Lendlord down below. You get 3 months free premium access to the app, and it'll have a bunch of metrics for you to better understand your investing portfolio. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Homefront Podcast. This is episode 29. If you haven't already and you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe to this video. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Music, please leave us a review. It definitely helps the algorithm and helps grow this podcast because we do it for our own enjoyment, but to help everyone else out. So yeah, lots to talk about again this week.
You start every podcast.
Bank of Canada. There always is.
Lots to talk about.
There always is. It's not my fault. I don't control this economic machine. But there's lots to talk about as usual. We've got a ton of stuff here like the Bank of Canada, and Brooke's going to dive into that for us, population growth, tons of stuff. So, Brooke, the Bank of Canada held rates at 5%. Every realtor's posting about it.
If you follow realtors on Instagram,
what does it mean?
This morning in the car, I was scrolling through people's stories, and I counted 9 back to back. I follow a lot of realtors, but back to back, Bank of Canada hold rates. Bank of Canada hold rates. So everybody's posting the announcement. Great. I find that a lot of buyers and even sellers see that and they're like, okay, great, but like, what does this mean for us? Like, where are we going?
Yeah.
What does it even mean that the Bank of Canada held? I got a lot of messages saying, is this good or bad? So us being in the industry know what it means. But for somebody that's, has a family that is full-time and works full-time and is not necessarily following the economy as much as we do, they're like, okay, so that's good because it could actually mean like, oh, they held instead of decreased. Is it bad?
Yeah.
So we made a point form list of essentially what you can take from that. So instead of just seeing Bank of Canada held rates, this is what you can, I guess, get.
Yeah, this was Tip Macklin said at the press conference. So just diving into it a little bit deeper and not just like, oh, they held rates.
Right.
Like what do they foresee going forward?
We summarized it all for you. So I'm just going to bang them out in a point form basis. So these are the most important things. So inflation has come down a lot, but for the Bank of Canada, it's still too high. The U.S. economy has been very strong and China has been weaker than expected. Further easing in inflation is likely to be slow. So there's parts of the inflation reading that they're calling sticky and stubborn in terms of it coming back down to that 2% rate. Inflationary risks have increased. The Russian war still persists, and Hamas attack on Israel will most likely continue and worsen. These wars hurt the global economy, obviously. Canadian economy has slowed and our economy has weakened. This should gradually ease inflation pressure within our country, but comes at a cost of economic slowdown. We won't see our target of 2% until late 2025. It says 2025. Late 2025 is probably in line to... They said 2024 in the beginning, and now they've pushed it back a year. Yeah, stubborn and sticky measures.
They think that inflation is going to stay at about 3.5% throughout 2024.
Well, so another thing just to mention is that keep in mind mortgage interest costs are a big part of an inflation reading. So it is like fighting inflation with inflation. So you're rising the mortgage interest costs, which is a big part of the inflation reading. So as that goes up, inflation is also going to go up. So it's a hard balance to get inflation down when you're raising one. That's part of the reading.
Yeah.
It's kind of fighting fire with fire.
Yeah.
But anyways, we'll continue. Demand for housing has slowed, and as well as the service sector, which includes like restaurants, and that's also seasonal a little bit. Like people are more out and about when the weather's nice. Yep. Kids aren't in school. GDP growth will remain below 1% for the next several quarters. Didn't it decrease? It was slight negative.
Yeah, it was negative last quarter. So we'll see what it's like this quarter.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the year, it was actually in the first quarter of this year. Sorry, it was actually pretty hot, which was surprising.
Things went up and then they came back down. It was like a little.
Yeah, and something else to add is that I think I have 2 things to add here. Is that so the Bank of Canada focuses on monetary policy, and then fiscal policy is government spending. So Tiff Macklin usually avoids this conversation but someone asked him about fiscal policy. Is it putting fire on inflation? Is government spending putting fire on inflation? And he actually did say it is. And he basically, you know, without saying it, was the spending of the federal government is actually hurting Canadians because it's making inflation higher.
Well, you look at what Trudeau is spending money on. Like,
lots of money.
And lots of it.
Yes.
On
lots of it.
Climate change in other countries and measures that for bringing that into check. Like, there's so many things that I understand need addressing. Climate change is a real thing. I can understand where his head's at. However, with Canadians suffering, an average Canadian making, not even average, above average earner making $125 a year. That's a high salary for a Canadian, not even being able to afford a below average priced house.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true.
Like, I saw a TikTok of a girl that said, I went to 4 years undergrad and I went to 4 years doctorate school. I'm a psychologist specializing in whatever the case may be, a specialized psychologist. So she is in the top 2% of earners and she can't even afford a below average house.
Yeah.
So there's something wrong. And then,
for sure.
And then we see our government spending all this money in other ways that I understand do need addressing. But if you look at it in a totem pole of what is the most important for your country and for your people.
Yeah.
And if Tiff Macklem's saying that spending is increasing inflation, which on the other turn is keeping people away from having a house or even a rental. I don't know if that's the smartest decision, but.
Yeah. And then the next thing that they did say, I think it was Carolyn Rogers said, she basically said that it is, how do I say this? So she's saying that rates are not stopping house prices from going up the way they essentially want them to, or put them in an affordability. We need more supply. One thing that we've learned from economics in the past is that rate hikes have a lagging indicator. So you don't really feel them till 12 to 16 months later. So a lot of guys on Twitter were saying, just wait for prices to come down because it's still a lagging effect.
Yeah.
So is it a lagging effect or is it the supply of homes that we need? And only time will tell.
Yeah, because even if, think about it. Nobody can buy right now because of where your monthly payment is, right? So if rates come back down and all of a sudden that becomes affordable, people are rushing into the market again. Everybody's waiting. Everybody's saying, I'm going to rent this year and I'm going to buy next year when things come down. Now, if everybody is waiting and there's a surplus of demand again without more supply, it's going to make houses go right back up.
Yeah.
So it's a loop unless we have that stop in the circle there. It's just going to be a endless.
Yeah, it just depends if people are going to be forced to sell, right? Because the right thing to happen in a healthy economy is that you have people saying, I'm waiting to buy. But a lot of people might have a home to sell. Like, you will have upscalers and downsizers. So that should balance out the supply and the demand side of things.
Right.
We just haven't seen that in so long because cheap credit fueled people getting into the market, and not just one person, but multiple people, like people owning multiple properties, right? If you have people taking out HELOCs on their own home and then going and buying another one, you're putting pressure on the supply and the demand economics of housing.
Yeah. So I was out with a lawyer that deals with a lot of his clients are lenders, private lenders, and
what I do.
Sorry?
Like what I do.
Yeah. Cortez is a private mortgage lender now.
Yeah.
We can get that into that on another day.
We can,
He does well with that. If you're looking to put some money and don't have enough for a down payment, but you do want to make a little bit of interest on your money sitting in a savings account, it could be a good option. I've listened to him talk about it, and it does seem like a good idea. Make sure that you don't need it for something else.
Yeah, you don't need it for something. That's the important thing. It's
use
locked
your rainy
up.
day money to
get.
But like you. So a lot of second position mortgagees, I think it's backwards, mortgagees. If they've defaulted, the owner has defaulted, and then the first mortgagee, I think I'm saying it right? The mortgagor is the one that borrows it. I think it's backwards, or am I wrong?
Just say first position and second position.
I'm gonna get spammed in the comments.
I actually don't know. So
I remember reading it and thinking it was backwards. Okay, anyways, the first mortgage, if you default, I think it takes 4 payments for them to I guess, begin the process of taking over your house. So a foreclosure would be the first mortgage holder taking over your house, whereas a power of sale is you being actually demanded to sell, which the second position mortgage can force. That makes sense?
Yep.
So he has 40 right now in Burlington, Hamilton, all the way to Niagara. And then his buddy in Toronto has 220 files on his desk that are coming to powers of sales and foreclosures.
Wow.
And we were talking, it's like, why don't these people try to sell themselves? And then because like at least try to sell it. If you know you're not going to make your mortgage payment, if something's happened, your mortgage is triple, you can't afford it, try to sell it yourself, right? Instead of having a foreclosure or a power of sale. Like that hurts you long term. But he's like, a lot of these people are just so tired and they're just like, here, like, take it. Yeah. So they're just walking away from it. Just freaking take it. Yeah. So that's between two lawyers. That's 260. In the grand scheme of things, okay, 260 isn't a big thing. Isn't a lot, really. Like, even if you look at previous years, these happen every year. It's obviously way higher right now because of what we're going through, but powers of sales and foreclosures aren't a new thing. They happen. So it's not a huge number in the grand scheme, but between two lawyers, it's a lot. That's a lot. So you can only, it's a lot of units. Yeah. Especially you're talking about like Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, which like historically have been these strong markets with people who make a lot of money, who you wouldn't even think there would be a delinquency on any of these homes. Like you would think like, oh, I'm never going to see a foreclosure in Oakville, Burlington, or Hamilton. To that point though, a lot of people love the buzzword foreclosure. They're like, oh, I want to see foreclosure list, but still, like, you go to the free market. It's still, it's not like it's like, they're selling 70 cents on the dollar. Now, if you are in private funding, you can get that home at 70, 80 cents on the dollar due to the loan to value. So that's what we look at when we do a private deal, is you look at the loan to value of the home. So you can actually take over that home. And that's kind of why I do it, is because it's an actual house. Like, it's like a hard asset. Well, so I'd imagine you're in second position.
A lot of them you can do firsts at like 10%. Like, there's a lot of, people who have millions of dollars who do firsts at 10% because these people just can't get money from the bank. So they're happy to take first position at 10%.
Yeah, because second position, so somebody's first mortgage is usually a bank or a credit union. Okay, so that's first position. So second position means you're paid out after the first position is paid out, if it's forced into a power of sale. So it's more, the reason why the rates are higher in second position and third position is because there's more risk. So if you default on your first position mortgage, keep in mind, even though it's in second position, you still have to pay all of them at the same time. It just means second position on payout. So you pay out your first mortgage. Usually it's 80% loan to value, so you do have money in it.
80% or less. Yeah,
exactly.
So the person has skin in the game.
Yeah. So the person has skin in the game. But if it sells and it's come down a ton, or you put it on the free market and it's not selling and people want to be paid out, first mortgage person gets paid out first. Whatever's left goes to second mortgage holder. Then if there is a third, and then if there's any profit left over, that goes to the seller. So the mortgage lenders actually cannot make a profit on it. You just can get paid back. And if there is a shortfall after paying out first mortgage holder, second mortgage holder is kind of SOL. But there is something called a judgment, which means if you own two properties, your primary residence and this investment property that's underwater and is going under power of sale, first mortgage person gets paid out, but there's not enough left over to pay you, for example, in second position, you can put a judgment on his primary residence, and that could take years for him to refinance or sell. But the minute anything happens with that one, then you get paid out. Yeah. But who's to say he doesn't refinance or sell for 20 more years? So you'd have to renew what's called a writ every 5 years and renew that judgment as a second position mortgage holder if there's short money. And so there's a lot of judgments, is what it's called, on people's primary residence if they're foreclosing on their investment property that they bought in the peak, that there's not enough money to pay their second
great job holder. Great job explaining that.
Oh wow, awesome. Thanks. there's some terminology. Wait, I'm not on my list.
Oh, you aren't even done.
There's 2 more. No, 3 more. Okay, back to my point form list. Bank of Canada believes inflation will be 3.5%. Oh, you said this, until the middle of next year. The wars could put pressure on gas prices and supply chains, forcing inflation higher.
That's something that people need to think about. If you're taking a variable rate right now because you think rates are coming down, you need to think about a black swan event happening.
Another freaking like nobody
Yeah.
saw COVID coming.
No
right?
one
The
saw
supply
Russia.
chains.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
know if people did, but I didn't see Russia invading Ukraine.
Well, that's a huge factor in energy costs.
Yeah, and wheat production and everything.
Yeah.
So I just wouldn't take a variable right now, but
Because
that's just my
there's so
opinion.
much uncertainty in the world. So we didn't predict COVID happening. So COVID shut down all the supply chains.
Yep.
That was all shut down. So inflation obviously rose huge. And then following the reopening of everything, then wars happened. Okay, now Russia and Ukraine and gas and energy prices, so that's hurting. Okay, now maybe some, the world is in such turmoil. Now there's another war.
Mhm.
So who's to say, like theoretically, you think rates are going to come back down, but look at all these things popping up all over the world.
Yeah.
That in 6 months,
Yeah, just be
Who
careful,
knows?
right? You know, even right now, the variable most likely is higher than a lot of the fixed rates that you can take. So if you want to weather a storm, take a 2-3 year fixed and just know what your payments are. You know, maybe I'm wrong, but hey, at least you're locked into
So,
something. At least you're
I've
not.
never taken a variable rate, and
Yeah.
I'm like pro risk all day long. Like I am very much on one side of the fence. If you're like measuring a risky person versus a you kind of person, I'm on this end. But I've never taken a variable rate ever.
Good for you. It's better to be on the side of caution when you're dealing with leveraged money, in my opinion. And also, remember when the Bank of Canada said it was pausing at 4%, and now they're at 5%. They didn't say they
that's
were
a big-
pausing, but everyone said they were pausing. Everyone said they were done. You just don't know, and
We
no
have
one
no
knows.
idea.
Not even the Bank of Canada knows.
Tiff Macklem doesn't even know
No,
because
of course
he says
not.
I'm prepared to raise rates higher if we need to as we continue to watch things happen because he can't predict if a war is going to break out.
For sure. If you can't predict that, you know, there's going to be inflationary pressure on oil prices, that he can't predict that, you know, food inflation is going to go up even more. No one can. So why wouldn't you just ease on the side of caution right now when the world feels like it's almost at this breaking point, and just take a fixed rate? But, you know, talk to your mortgage advisor or someone you trust.
Yes. I wouldn't go longer than 2 years though.
Yeah, 2
I
or
only
3.
do-
I think.
so, okay.
Well, 2 or 3, because if you take the longer the rate you take, the less rate it is. So you need to look at the rate and say,
Yeah.
how much are they going to cut by for me to get to that point?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I hear that. I've only done 1 year fixed always, because I force value in my houses. So if I buy something and I'm careful with what I buy as investment properties, obviously don't not be careful, but I buy things that I can force value into. So even if I buy in the market comes down a little bit, if I force that value and do renovations or create a basement suite or do something to force the value, my 1 year fixed expires in a year. 9 months in, if I start my renovation the day I take possession, 9 months in, I can refinance my money out. Now, be careful because that's going to raise your mortgage. That's going to, obviously, you're going to have a new rate. Sometimes if you stay with the same lender, they'll offer you a cheaper rate and you won't have to pay the refinance cost. Usually you have to pay the lender a 1% fee, especially if it's a B lender. So there's ways to kind of save if you're doing it the way I do it. And obviously, please reach out to me if you have any questions. But my investment properties have been pretty strategic with how to run them and how to refinance them 9 months into both while still making them a property that breaks even at this point where my tenants essentially pay down my mortgage. Every penny that I've ever put in those houses are gone and back in my pocket. And now the tenants just pay down the mortgage. Now they're 2 properties with my name on it with none of my own money in it. That's a very, you got to be careful doing it that way. There's a lot of things I need to check out to make it work. But that's my reasoning as to why I take a 1 year fixed, planning for a refinance. Now that I've refinanced both, now I'll lock in for 5 years. Just stay over there. I don't want to look at you.
Yeah, I don't want to see you.
Okay, last point. If inflation doesn't go down, they will continue to raise rates. Period. Period.
Yeah.
Okay.
I added that in there.
Did you add that or did?
Yeah, no, I added that in the notes.
Period.
It's just like period. Like that's blatantly what he said. If
Yeah.
he needs to restore price stability in Canada for Canadians, and that's his number one job. So don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted.
Like just like don't overthink it. If inflation's not coming down, rates are not going down.
Like when inflation was 8%, I feel like now it's like, oh my gosh, inflation was 8%. As we were going
crazy?
through it, I don't think people realized what was actually happening and the
No.
consequences that were going to follow.
Until they went to the grocery store and they're like, "Oh my god, what did I just spend?"
I still laugh at cereal. I used to love cereal. I don't really eat it anymore. I eat my $4 oats.
I eat cereal.
It's wild. It's $10 for a box. I
I get the one on sale all the time.
Yeah,
I try
Brittany's
new
a really
ones.
good shopper. Me, not so much.
No, you're
but
horrible. Okay, next topic.
Yeah.
We've been
Okay.
rambling.
Jeez.
First time we've rambled in a long time.
We did ramble.
Yeah, this one's actually good. 57% of recently built Toronto condos are owned by investors.
57%?
57%. It gets worse. Over half of the condo apartments built in Toronto in recent years were owned by investors, according to new data from Statistics Canada. From 2016 to 2021, investors owned 37,580 newly constructed condos in Toronto, accounting for 56.7% of new builds. Other popular cities also have followed suit. The Queen of Hamilton here knows this one. Hamilton's seen 55.5% of condo apartments built between 2016 and 2021 owned by investors. In London, that number has reached a staggering 80.5%. And in Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo, it's 71.7%. So just as we were talking about before, how people own multiple properties and how that creates pressure on supply. This is the exact same scenario that we're talking about. Although some of these do come to market as rentals, which isn't a terrible thing. But
well, if you bought them at a good price, okay, yes, we have decreased, like as a blanket. If you look at all those cities that you mentioned, let's average it at 20%. Okay, some more.
Yeah.
Some like 30, 40.
The COVID darlings got hit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but let's average them 20%. It's probably good.
Probably pretty good.
If you bought them pre-construction at a good price, if they're coming to market now and you bought them 4 years ago, they've gone up more than 20%. So now you just have a condo that's face value of what it's worth.
Yeah.
So now because the rates are very high, you probably expected your payment. You probably expect to have much more equity, which you don't have equity, but you're not over leveraged. And your payment's just much higher than what you can rent for. So now what do? You either sell or you stomach a negative for the next couple of years because like as much as people want to think that house prices aren't going to go back to where they were, they are. It's just going to be how long it takes.
Yeah.
So either you stomach the negative, you do something creative with it, like you can pull out, a lot of people are mortgage free. Like there's things you can do to
and rents are going up too, right? Like
rents are crazy.
Like most likely you've closed on this and you're in that 2018 bracket where you can raise rent as much as you'd like. So
if you own a condo built after 2018 or
like November 2018,
or if you have built a new basement apartment, so you've added a second dwelling or a garden suite that's built after November 2018, you are not subject to rent control. However, you can't raise it to the point, you can't raise it if you already have a tenant to the point of it not being comparable to market rent. You can advertise it if it's vacant as whatever the hell you want. And if you get it, great. But if you already have a tenant paying, let's say $2,000, and now you see similar units going for $2,400 because there's a rent surge right now, you can say, hey, Mr. Tenant, your rent's now $2,400 and you're not subject, or get out.
Yeah.
You're not subject to the rent increase guidelines if it's built after that year. But if they're already there, you can't say, hey, Mr. Tenant, your rent's going to $3,500 because my mortgage payment's $3,500 if the comparable unit's
sure?
already $24,000.
Remember that story in the Toronto Star recently where those two girls were paying $3,000 a month and then the landlord put it up to $7,000?
Well, then that unit has to be comparable to another unit having rented for $7,000 because you can only raise it to market rent if there's somebody already there. If it's
that would make sense.
If it's vacant, advertise it for $12,000, whatever you want. If you get it, excellent.
But a lot of people don't make a lot of things in Canadian real estate.
My rental, my 1-bedroom apartment rental gets $3,500, and most of them get $2,200.
Yeah,
I've put in nicer finishes, and I got it.
And you're furnished. You're short term.
It is furnished, and she's staying for 6 months.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Don't think that I'm a bad landlord by charging people more money. I have very nice furniture in there.
Yeah.
But if she was already there paying $2,200, and I wanted to raise it on her to $3,500, I wouldn't have been able to because I couldn't find a comparable unit that's rented for $3,500. I'd be able to maybe say, look, my furniture is worth X amount and she's equipped with everything she needs. But that's, I think, the guidelines as to how.
Okay, cool.
How
that's
you
interesting. I also wanted to add, I was listening to someone talk about Jagmeet Singh.
Did you see the video of him riding the bike on the sidewalk?
On the sidewalk? I did see that.
You're not following the law.
No, I did see that. So good. Okay, it's my serious point about Jagmeet Singh. You know how he harps on greedflation and he harps on all these grocery stores, even though their margins are razor thin. I'm not saying grocery stores aren't price gouging because, like, I've seen videos where like you go to one grocery store and the other, and
their margins are not razor thin.
They're not razor thin, but they are thin.
What?
Yeah, they are very
Didn't
thin.
Metro just have like a fuck? Here I'm
If you
swearing.
look, oh no, don't swear. We're gonna get demonetized. If you look, I was listening to this economist talk, and if you look at how much money like they're grossing, it's like, oh my God, that's so much money.
But
And then you look at the net,
Yeah.
like it's actually not that great of a business model. So that's what they're showing. Anyways, I'm not saying that they're not gouging. They probably are. But someone goes, if Jagmeet Singh was smart, what he would do to appeal to like millennials and stuff, like that the conservatives and liberals will never say, is that he's going, if he gets in power, and he won't, but if he gets in power, he's going to make sure people can't buy a second property or investment property. Like, could you imagine how many young people who are not home ownership would be like, oh my God, like I'm going to go vote for this guy. He's going to help me get a home. You own multiple homes, so you're not going to vote for him. I'm saying the person, like you're saying no right away, but the person who doesn't own a home and hears me say that they live in London, Ontario, and 80% of people are investors in condos. Yeah. And he says, I'm going to stop that. Young people in London, Ontario are going to say, I love that.
But don't you think that is just way too much exercised control over the people? Like that 100%.
Is like, I'm just saying if he was smart, he would stop like, communism.
That's communism.
He would, but what I'm saying, if he wanted votes from young people, someone said this is what he should say.
Crazy that they would vote for him, not realizing the bigger picture. Yes, everybody wants to own a house and they think that that's good for them, but that is like, that reminds me of the book The Giver. If anybody has read that in high school by Lois Lowry, it's about this society that you get told what job you have to do. You get offered a job. Here's your house and you get your kids.
You get a house? I might be down for that. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so you get your house, you get your children. Like, I don't know where children are made in this book, but you get your children, you get your house, and you get your job. Weather is controlled. Everything's controlled. And it's like, even like the book 1984, Big Brother. Like George Orwell predicted that would happen in 1984. He's a little bit too early, but fast forward 30 years and here we are. That is such a bad thing for millennials, and you need to realize what that's going to do and how much power that gives the government over you.
He's not going to do it. I'm just saying that this is
the
what
fact that they're talking about it.
No, this is just what someone said he should be doing rather than harping on the grocery stores. If he wanted to gain votes, that's just if he wanted to gain votes.
I don't like that that's even their thought though, because it's like, it's so much.
Well, why would you? You own 5 units. Of course you would. Like, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here.
It's not even about that. It's about,
I'm saying all the millennials who have no chance, if you wanted to just like spark their interest and just like hear what you want to hear, which is I'm going to make sure that because everyone thinks, right?
Everybody
landlords are greedy. Yeah, landlords are greedy. Too many people, like 80% of investors are in London owning these condos. You would think in your head, well, if he makes this rule, he's got my vote because maybe there's a chance that I can actually get a condo myself because 80% of the buying pool in London would be gone. I
liked him when he was riding on the sidewalk, just like cruising.
He looked kind of chic. You just like bopping down the street.
Fast.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
The sidewalk, just going in and out of things.
Anyways, after I just pissed off Brooke, let's go to the next one. Okay. You'll read the last one. You want to read the last one? Or you want to read this one? You got a phone call?
I got a phone call, but population growth in Canada is outpacing housing completions by 40%.
Yes, that's incredible.
That's incredible in a bad way. It's no secret that housing completions trail well behind population growth in Canada, but there's still some shock value when you dig into the actual numbers. According to a research bulletin, did you write bulletin?
No. I didn't.
According to a research bulletin from the Fraser Institute, Canada's population increased by an average 553,000 people between 2018 and 2022. During that same time period, the 205,000 new homes were built on average. Just 205,000 new homes were built on average per year. The gap between those two figures has hit a 50-year high. Jesus. Yep. Over the last 5 years, housing completions equaled less than 40% of population growth, a stark difference from the early 1970s when population growth almost equaled housing completions. Specifically from 1972 to 1976, the population grew by 299,000 people per year compared to an average of 237,000 new homes being built.
Yeah, isn't that wild? We're building less homes than we are in the 70s today. Like with all the technological advances, with all the new people we have, we are still building less homes than we have in the 70s, which is wild. So, I mean, again, talking about just the basic supply and demand economics.
Like, my mom's friend in Europe was saying how everybody just rents for their whole life, and the people that own a house, you just are. There's no middle class anymore. You either are rich or you're. I don't want to say poor, but like you
Less rich.
less rich. There's no middle.
But
class.
you need a middle class, I think. Like I think it's important you need a middle
too.
class. Like you can't, and like, you know, don't take this as an offense, but like I think middle class has always been like firefighters and nurses and teachers, like very important jobs.
Well, that they're saying that now. Okay, maybe there's no.
You can't be a teacher and live in many areas in Canada and like not be poor.
It's freaking sad. And
it is sad.
The tax, like, okay, so my sister gets on me about this. So self-employed people, because you are able to pay yourself into a corporation and then pay yourself personally, how much money you essentially save in tax, because all your write-offs also come from the corporation. Your salary is a write-off that you pay yourself, and you get to control how much you take, so that in turn controls how much personal tax you're paying, and then corporate tax is 11 or 12%.
Yeah.
So it's so much, so it keeps the rich people rich. And then if you are an engineer like my sister, very good job, went to school for 4 years, they just rip her paycheck in half and give it to her. And there's no shielding. There's no control over it. And I'm not saying like some of where our tax dollars go, I support. I would rather pay higher tax and be able to, my parents, touch wood, get sick and have cancer. Like I do support free medical care. I do. Some people are against it. I support it. So I'd rather our taxes be high and do have some of the things that we have, but there are a lot of things that the government is taxing us on and raising taxes to be able to afford their spending on ridiculous things like climate change in South America.
Yeah. Big smile. I think free healthcare is great. Don't get me wrong, but I think that you should be able to pay for something and almost get it expedited if you need it, like an MRI. Why are people? No, like people go to the States to get MRIs because they take so long to get here. So like you're going to the States to get an MRI and spending $400 there when you could be spending it here. If you gave people the option that could afford it, and then you could open up more space for people who can't afford it in the list of going for an MRI.
I think they just have more infrastructure there to be able to.
No, they don't. Their healthcare isn't free, right? So you pay for it. When you pay for something, it always goes faster. Like a friend of mine she went to a Toronto hospital because she had a bad bladder infection. She waited 7 hours just to get processed. That's where it's broken,
I love
right?
having my mom as a nurse.
Yeah.
Running to her and saying, actually, what's wrong? But to be honest, I thought there was ways you can expedite it in Canada. Like everything that I've.
No, I think if you want an MRI right now, it's probably a year-long wait for an MRI. Think about all the surgeries during COVID. Like there's too much stress on the system.
Yeah.
Not enough doctors, not enough.
Like okay, maybe I'm looking at the more mental health side of things in my head as I'm like processing like previous experiences. You're right, because I now am thinking of children's surgery. My mom works at Sick Kids, and there's children waiting for a heart transplant that they just not only did they have a heart for this child?
Yeah.
They didn't have enough workers, so they delayed the surgery 3 times, and this little boy could have died. And luckily he lived. He has his heart. Thank God to the family and the child, but that's a problem. But I was thinking more about the mental, because you can pay a psychiatrist and go right away. You can pay a dermatologist and go right away.
It's a different form of medical. Different form of medical services.
It is different form of medical. So yes, things like an MRI and surgeries, you're right. Yeah, I agree with. But then it's like the rich people just get serviced right away.
Well, you can look at it like that, or you can look at it as like, yes, they get service right away, but then everyone's wait time goes down. So even if you go to the free healthcare, you're not going to have that stress on the system as much. I'm not an expert on this.
We don't even have enough workers or infrastructure to support having
a lot of
practices. And
you would, because you would incentivize doctors to open up private practices, but instead they go and do that in the States.
Actually, my mom's chief of surgery at Sick Kids was working in Canada. Okay, he was making a very good salary as a chief of surgery, but like not like let's call it 900,000 a year. Okay, wild salary.
Not that
However,
much.
he went to Texas. It went to 7 mil a year, 7 mil a year, and like a $4 million signing bonus cash.
Like money talks.
And it's US.
Yeah, I hate to say
call
it.
that 10 million. You went from 900K, let's call it 10 to 1.
Call him whenever you want.
now he's
And the
working in
weather's
Texas.
better. The houses are cheaper.
And he's working in Texas, so now we've lost a chief of surgery that is very skilled and specialized because we're at a 10 to 1.
You have to incentivize people to work. You have to have systems in place because even I think the average engineer or tech worker makes half of what they would make if they go to the States, if they stay here. It's like half.
It's
you're not incentivizing people.
Canada
you have
is so broken right now.
broken.
That's all I see on TikTok. Did you see Andrew Tate was like, don't want to go to Canada, don't care, don't want to go.
He's like, no, it was even worse. But
I will die before I ever see a moose.
Yeah, I won't even repeat what he said. But it was like, oh,
don't care, don't want to
go. We're not Andrew Tate fans. Don't come after us. Anyways, we'll laugh. Okay, last topic here, and we'll wrap this up for producer Nick over there. Majority of borrowers concerned about future mortgage renewals. Nearly a third of mortgages across Canada are heading for renewal in the next 18 months, and the vast majority of borrowers are worried about their time coming. A new mortgage renewal survey from Royal LePage, hey, we work there, found that a sizable 68% of borrowers with a renewing mortgage are concerned about that upcoming renewal. For borrowers whose mortgages will renew in the next 18 months, that number gets even worse to 74%. They are concerned about renewing, saying they consider extending the amortization period, switching to another lender, or extending their mortgage term and selling their home to buy a smaller property to reduce their mortgage. So again, we have this big mortgage renewal coming in 2024 and 2025, which I've always said, I think we said this like literally 6 months ago on the podcast. There's billions of dollars coming due, and it's going to stress people very much. It's going to stress the system very much. So just be wary of what's to come.
There is people that I've interviewed with for the listing that we're preparing to go to market, saying my mortgage renewal is on November 20th. Find me our lease on November 1st, which I have girls literally doing because I cannot afford what my payment's going to. Can't do it. We are selling before November 20th. And I'm like, all right, on it. But her payment is going up. I think she said $2,100. And she works as a nurse at Credit Valley. So she's a nurse at Credit Valley. She has 3 kids. And her husband, I think, is a car salesman. 2 good jobs, a nurse and a car salesman.
Yeah.
Okay. But with 3 kids, $2,100. They're like, we can't do it. Get us out of here.
Yeah.
Now we're uprooting the children to move to lease. They've been there for however many years. They have to move cities. They can't even afford the rent.
Yeah. It's a sad reality.
Right. And so that's not even the only one, as to my point. So we have another one. I'm currently moving tenants out because it was an investment property. Great property. Mortgage is like $2,500 more than what the rent is giving him. Gotta sell. Okay, let's get that one. I just did one in Hamilton. He was $1,500 negative a month. Can't do it. With normal jobs, if you're not self-employed and commissioned and doing well at that, because there's a lot of commission-based people like us in our industry that are struggling.
Sure.
Like we're even slow and we're not used to being slow. Like it's a slow market, less sales. It is what it is. But there's definitely people that are hurting more than others. I think there's going to be a lot of pain in the next 6 months, like more so than what we're seeing right now.
100%. I've been banging this drum for so long.
So did you see the freaking house I posted the other day? They bought it for 1.24. Had it listed for like the past 4 months. They just sold for 880.
People are walking away from like mind-blowing amounts of money.
Because in a normal job, try to save $200K. How do you do it? You can't. People that do well on commission can do it decently quicker, I suppose, but the cost of things are just wild. You cannot physically put away your tax dollars into an account with the cost of living unless you're making over $250,000, and that's even low to be able to save a down payment right now.
Yeah, like if you're, obviously we have the advantage of being single and like not having kids and stuff. So I think it's doable when, you are a hustler and you work hard and you have a sales job as an example. Not that you're not working hard on a salary, but Having a sales job, you can exponentially increase how much you're making, right? Like say that payment comes up, right? You need an extra $2,000. Like you're going to go out there and do some leases. You're going to go out there and hustle, right? Like that's what you're going to do. But if you're stuck in a salary job and it's taking up all your time and, you know, your wage just can't possibly increase as fast as your expenses are increasing, and you got to pay for kids and you got to pay for daycare. Those are the people that I really feel for. So yeah, it's going to be a tough reality. I think we've talked about it, and like we're keeping each other positive during a, you know, let's call it a hard time. Like it is a hard time. I haven't
sold a house in 3 weeks, and it's like I tell people I'm unemployed right now. Like
yeah, but most, you know, and then I flip it on you that most people sell 4 homes a year. You know what I mean? Like you are very above average. So it's just when you get used to being above average and the market pulls against you is when it can play with your mind.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa.
But you're still crushing it compared to the normal person. So
wow.
Keep going.
All these compliments. Keep coming.
Don't get used to it.
Thank you.
That's it for the rest of the week. Anyway, you got anything else to add?
Take what I can get. Nope.
Nope. Market's slow. That's about it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. This was a good episode. I felt like we were flowing back and forth pretty good. So if you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Spotify, Apple Music, leave us a review. It definitely helps us get this long form content out to more people. And on our Instagram, you can follow us there. We just passed 20,000 followers, so people are loving the short form content. And if you guys want to work with Brooke or myself, you can book a call with us down below. Send us an email or a text. We would love to help you guys. We're in Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville, and we do the surrounding areas as well. And if you want us to put you in contact with an agent more in your local market, you can book a call with us too, and we'll definitely help you do that as well. Anyways, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you.
Bye.